Thank you, Mr. Gopal, and I want to say hello to all viewers, and thank you for having me on this interview. Of course, kind of, answers you expect from me on the global scale. So I think, I'm a bit too humble to to give replies. I can only share maybe some sensations, some feelings over the situation. For me personally, of course, uh, uh, I'm fine, and SAVIO staff or my colleagues, as we were saying earlier, we belong to a region which is a bit away from the epicenter of the infection. And I understand that Italy was very much in the news since we were the first country, let's say, in the West outside China to be hit, and in a very big way. It was totally unexpected, and that's why maybe the reaction was a bit slower in the beginning. But eventually, all the measures were implemented, and we had to invent to come find some solution to this problem. But eventually, we managed it. And I would say now the worst is on our back, and for us, it's not normal now, and won't be normal for some time. But at least it's a new normality. At least the worst is over. There is confidence. So during this period, of course, as you say, talking about Savio and the business, we didn't completely shut down the facility during this almost 3 months now. We did it only at the peak of the infection, because the authorities rightly decided to stop every kind of activity involving people and movement of people. At the same time, we were, compelled to, set up our manufacturing line in a different way in order to fulfill those new safety, health, and regulations. So social distance, some screens on tables, like it is there in our meeting room, desk, sanitization, frequent cleaning, rearrange our canteen, so providing masks, temperature checks, these things that now are normal in all sort of places. So for a period, I would say about 2 weeks, the operation were basically stopped, and then slowly we resumed. Unlike India, in Italy, goods were allowed to move, so we could fulfill those obligations that we had in terms of delivery, of course, even during March, April, and May. When it comes to manufacturing, we did have sufficient stock to use for manufacturing, for processing the orders that were on. But basically, there was not much or not a big interruption. Likely, this is a good news for us. Although the crisis was very severe here, and now it seems to be severe in some other markets, some other places, we didn't receive any single order cancellation, which is good. So whatever we have lost during this month, we will make it up in the following month. So I would say that this year, of course, we'll see a sensible reduction in terms of order turnover, but we most probably, I would say next year, middle of next year, we could be, I would say, almost back to normal. See, we have 3 manufacturing hubs, of course, Italy and China and India. So being in different countries and being the virus, the infection started on different times, we could manage it, let's say, in applying the safety rules, safety norms, so that we eventually applied here, and of course complying with the local regulations. So our Chinese facility, of course, was the first to stop and to remain shut for some time and doing the things that the government, the local authorities asked. Then came the infection, the virus, the crisis. It our headquarters here. So again, a bit slowdown in manufacturing and rethinking of the manufacturing process. By this time, Chinese operations were almost in full swing. And later, it came into India, and where the third hub is. And SAVIO India, of course, in compliance with the local regulations, particularly Tamil Nadu regulation, I understand they remained closed for a few weeks, and they have restarted. Always complying with the rules set by the local authorities. So slowly, let's say, we are recovering in full in terms of manufacturing capacity. Of course, there might be some hiccups here and there because we rely on local suppliers, and there might be some interruptions. But I think majority of orders will go through almost on time. No big delays in that. Yeah, I would say that right now there is no market fully active, because it went into a wave which started from Far East, then it came to Europe, now it's going further west to the Americas, and even in active markets, the operation had to slow down because relying on orders coming from affected countries, or relying on raw materials coming from affected countries. So I would say the whole world, even in the textile business, was more or less affected. Like we had, let's say, I would say earlier that for us now there is a new normality. It's not normality; it's a new normality, and we had to discover, find new ways of being in touch with customers. So now our activity outside SAVIO is more, I would say, operates in two ways. One is the pre-sale sales, and then is the post-sales. So in both activities, we managed to find new ways of being in touch with customers. Of course, I was actively, routinely calling customers and checking up with them. Of course, there were not much business discussions, but we were sort of comforting each other. No? When Italy was in the peak of the crisis, I was receiving a lot of sympathies from my customers. Now that India is in this situation, I'm giving them comfort. So we're being in touch. One of the new ways that we now have for being in touch, since we cannot meet in person, and the body language and the physical language is the most important way of communicating. It's this one, like we are talking now, me and you, by video or this kind of things. So it's something new, something that we are still in the learning curve. In fact, most of the time when we set up this kind of video calls, most of the time goes in fine-tuning all the technical stuff. Sometimes microphone not working, video not working, communication is low, but we are getting used slowly, and the technology will also help. So this is what I did. Of course, since it was impossible for me being in India and visiting customer personally, now let's say is the job of the agent, our agent ATE, is very aggressively and very efficiently maintaining all the relationship with customers and getting all the updates and sharing their opinion and these kind of things. The other part, the service part, of course, I understand that they have engaged customers in those activities which cannot be done when milling is in full operation. Sometimes technicians are busy, they don't want to be disturbed, so sometimes they let down some maintenance aspects. They always postpone some activities on the machines. So now that was the time to do this kind of activities, and we gave them full support, sometimes of course remote support, but still efficient support, to do things on the machinery which is not possible to do when the machine is running. both ways, preserving the machines when the machine were completely stopped, in order to find the machine perfectly running when it starts, and also giving suggestions for some questions which went unasked for many years, and going in deep, touching some subjects of the machine operation which were not for some time, lack of time, not touched before. So somehow through webinar, phone calls, some corporate customers, SAVIO India has done some seminar on maintenance, so involving many people at the same time, which is impossible to do in normal times. So we try to stay as much as possible close. And of course, from a spare part point of view, as I said, in Italy, we didn't have any restriction in moving parts out of factory. Maybe there were some in the receiving countries, but that also remained active throughout the crisis. So I think we managed it the best possible way. And these new ways of being in touch, which we discovered now, one thing goes back to normal. Even when we'll be able to meet personally, we will remember that between visits we can use this kind of tools, and we'll make the bond between us and the customer very, very strong, I would say. That's a good question. There are certain activities like machine erections, which of course has to be performed live. And we had a few cases in India, installations going on, and the amount of paperwork involved for getting passes, moving from state to state, likely distances were manageable by car, so our technician could go and perform their job there. This thing will remain, of course. We were ready actually to somehow assist the running of the machine with remote controls or this kind of technology. And we've been introducing this kind of technological help for machine operation years ago. But somehow, because of complexity, because it was considered a luxury, because it was maybe expensive, most of the customer did not consider or did not look deeply into this aspect of machine operation, only for finding now how important it is. So it's nothing that we have to do extra at present to create a new style of operating the machine, because those tools that we developed are already there. So now the customer base has realized that, yes, these things are important, not only in the time of crisis, but also for the day in, day out operations, remote control, remote inspection, remote setup of the machine. These kind of things are, I think now they have, the people have realized how important they are. And another big aspect, or I should say a big problem with a big issue that will, especially the Indian textile mills will face when the crisis is over, is, as you said, labor shortage. And I've been following the news and interacting with customers during this time, and they say, okay, we are facing issues because orders are not there. Even if the orders are there, we cannot move the product out of the mill. Cash is a problem, all these things. But the main issue is that labor. Those poor people was left the places where they were working to return to their villages. Although I feel very sad for them, but textile mill in India should rely less on this kind of factor, cheap labor from outside the place. And the only way is to rely more on automation. Of course, some textile mill has already started long back to look into this angle, because labor was sometimes not available or sometimes too expensive. So they have restructured their manufacturing facility, applying more automation. But I would say the vast majority of medium, small spinning mills in India still relies on manual machines, and this is where, of course, these people will be more exposed to that, because once business is normal, they might not be able to fulfill their orders because of lack of labor. So it's an expensive investment sometimes, but on the long run it pays off, and it's the only way to go. So in this aspect, we know that there is a good number of small mills, small spinning mills, still, for instance, operating manual winders. And going from manual winding to auto winding, for them, it's considered extremely big investment. But that's the way to go if you want to survive. So in this particular segment, we can offer, I would say, a winder which is extremely proven and reasonably priced. That machine will make the transition from full manual to auto winding with the lowest investment. But from that they can grow and look at other much automated ways of producing yarn, and we are fully ready to assist this kind of segment. And time now has come also for them to jump into the new era, the new age of manufacturing. One thing I wanted to add is that I've been looking after India since the last 15 years, and I have no experience of selling machines outside India. So if you ask me comparisons, I have to rely on what I hear from colleagues. I don't have direct hand-on operation outside India. And in my 15 years, I have been, hearing every now and then, but very frequently, they say that whenever we sit for discussion or whenever we loosely talk about business, the word government is always there. Government should help, government should give this incentive, government should do this, government should do that. I mean, it's all right. If government can help to, your investment somehow by giving some incentive, at the end, you are exposed to the open market and you are in a commodity segment. So unless and until the government buys also your product and keep things moving, fine. But I don't think the government help will come to the extent of buying yarn. So this reliance on government subsidies and this and that, which has created overcapacity in spinning in India. So the growth in the textile chain in India has not been, from what I see, not very organic. I mean, there is huge capacity in spinning and much lower capacity in the next process, like garmenting especially. And this is where India has to improve. I mean, there is no point in putting up spinning mills and spinning mills and spinning mills without creating also demand for the yarn. And you cannot rely on, always on outside demand or something that for a shorter, maybe for a shorter period of time gives you order, but all of a sudden might disappear. So this is what I've seen in my 15 years in India. So government can help in this aspect. I understand they might be helping in creating conditions for investment in garmenting. But see, at the end of the day, government job is to make roads, to make good roads, tunnels, solid bridges, but it cannot buy you a car. It cannot drive your car. So you have to buy the car, you have to drive it. Good roads are there, bridges, you can go on, no issues. But ultimately, you have to rely, if you are a true entrepreneur, this is where the spirit of entrepreneurship comes. This thing won't be happening overnight because it requires a huge change of mentality. But from what I understand, the big fashion houses or big retail chains are now trying to rearrange their procurements. And they have found the hard way that they cannot rely only on a single country supplier like it was for China. So the next country which has the potential of fulfilling their huge orders is India. But India right now, I think, is not ready, and you cannot do this thing overnight. But this is the way to go. So focusing, no longer focusing on spinning is counterproductive for me to say. But at the end, if garmenting increases, spinning will also follow later. So there should be a more balanced distribution in India when it comes to textile products. So I believe that the next or the post-COVID era for India would be toward that direction. And we are again here to help and serve. Our machinery range will be including new models, new machines, and shortly there will be some also news on the product that we are developing. Everything is set for this. Tough question, and I wish I had a crystal ball. But let's see what happened to China, which was the first to experience this crisis. Textile mills in China are now, from what I hear, back to normal. So from the operational point of view, things have normalized. Of course, they rely on orders. Mainly orders come from the West, from Europe, from the US. And unless and until these two big markets reopens in full, they won't be able to run full capacity. But in a matter, I would say in a span of 6 months, they have come from complete lockdown or shut mill to operational mill. Only now is order has to go back to normal. So in my opinion, this 6 months period could be the time, of course, plus minus months here and there, after which we may see signs that indicate us that things have gone back to normal. For instance, Italy and I would say most of Europe has allowed the shops to reopen in full. Of course, safety measure has to be in place. And wherever I go, I see people lining up for purchases. So I would say that the wave is moving from, as the virus moved from east to west, closing down activities, the same thing is happening now from east to west in reopening activities. Probably we are just discussing because this is more or less a wild guess for anyone. So, but I'm discussing among colleagues, among our managers and other players in the industry. They say that by mid next year or early, let's say first half of next year, things should go back to normal. Now there are some also logistic issues, air traveling and these kind of things, which maybe limit a little bit the activities, the general activities in the business. But once these are lifted, I would say we'll be back to normal, and this thing will be something that we will remember, but forget very soon. Of course, it has taught us some lessons, and we have to record this experience and try to avoid, whenever this thing may happen again, to repeat the same mistake. We all hope now that somehow the technology, the science will eventually come up with some kind of vaccine, which will probably put an end, final end on this issue once and for all. I also big hello to all my Indian friends, and I'm really looking forward to come to India again. It's been the longest period for me of absence in India because normally every month I was traveling for a couple of weeks, and this is the longest, almost 3 months now. And yes, it might be more months will be required before we can consider coming again. But yes, we will eventually meet there in India soon.